A commercial ultimatum looms over the world, a sword of Damocles wielded by Donald Trump, who, from Washington, orchestrates a power play, holding nations, workers, and consumers hostage. His reciprocal tariffs, announced in April 2025, are not just an economic measure. They're a weapon, a blackmail, a geopolitical gamble that could reshape the global economy. Who will bend under this threat? Who will pay the price for this arrogance? Why is Europe, so proud of its unity, trembling before this American juggernaut? And you there behind your screen, are you ready to watch the world falter without saying a word? Dive with me into this trade war threatening our jobs, our wallets, and the very idea of a cooperative world. If you're not yet subscribed, you're missing out on essential news. To stay informed, you just need to be in the right place, and that place is here on the Carlos Lucas channel. So click subscribe and stay awake. It's June 12th, 2025, and the air is thick with uncertainty. Rewind last April. Donald Trump, freshly reinstalled in the White House with the swagger of a showman, drops a bombshell: reciprocal tariffs. The concept is brutally simple. If a country taxes American products at 20%, the US will slap the same rate on its goods. A minimum 10% surcharge applies to everything crossing the American border, with carefully chosen exceptions. The stated goal? To shrink the US trade deficit, which Trump claims is bleeding the country dry. He promises $6 trillion will flow back into Uncle Sam's coffers. But behind this populist rhetoric lies something else: a drive to reassert US economic supremacy, to force nations, European Union, China, Canada, Mexico, to bow to his vision of a world where America sets the rules. On April 9th, facing global outcry and a brutal market crash, the CAC 40 tanked, Tokyo wobbled, Frankfurt swayed. Trump suspends these punitive tariffs for 90 days until July 9th. A truce, he says, to negotiate trade deals. A magnanimous pause, more like a disguised ultimatum, a clock ticking on the table, tick-tock, tick-tock. Yesterday, from the Kennedy Center in Washington, where he attended the premiere of Les Miserables, bitter irony, Trump doubled down. Surrounded by journalists, he announced that within 2 weeks, letters will be sent to dozens of countries. Letters containing take-it-or-leave-it deals, ultimatums plain and simple. Here's the deal: accept it or pay, he declared, with that mix of theatricality and arrogance that defines him. Scott Bessent, his Treasury Secretary, tried to soften the blow before Congress, whispering that an extension of the pause is possible if countries negotiate in good faith. But who still buys these soothing words? The backroom reeks of bluff and manipulation. Mainstream media, meanwhile, dutifully parrot official statements like obedient stenographers. They barely mention the European factories shutting down, the French farmers dreading another bloodbath, the small businesses at risk of collapsing under the weight of these tariffs. Why this silence? Why isn't anyone saying that behind the numbers are lives, families, futures on the line? Only one concrete deal has emerged from these 3 months of so-called negotiations with the United Kingdom. But analysts call it minimal, a band-aid on an open fracture. With China, Trump brags about a framework involving rare earths, critical for electronic chips, and visas for Chinese students. But the crushing 125% tariffs on Chinese goods remain in place. Beijing for now stays silent, but we know Xi Jinping isn't one to fold without a fight. With the European Union, it's chaos. Howard Lutnick, Commerce Secretary, doesn't hide his frustration. Negotiating with a bloc of 27 nations is like herding cats. Meanwhile, in Dunkirk, ArcelorMittal announces 600 job cuts, blaming the steel crisis worsened by trade tensions. In Bordeaux, winemakers fear for their exports. In Berlin, automakers grit their teeth. And American consumers? They're starting to see price tags climb in supermarkets. What Trump calls a negotiation is nothing but organized blackmail. His tariffs are a psychological weapon, a lever to force nations into lopsided deals. These take-it-or-leave-it letters, a cowboy tactic straight out of a Western where the sheriff imposes his law through fear. Bessent talks of regional deals with smaller countries. Translation: divide and conquer, isolate weaker nations, force them to bend while keeping the big players, EU, China, under pressure. Look at the UK. Weakened by Brexit, it signed a minimal deal in record time. Small countries have no choice. They yield or sink. China plays a subtler game. By conceding on rare earths, it avoids immediate escalation but keeps cards up its sleeve. A strong retaliation from Beijing could choke global access to these critical materials, collapsing the tech industry. The EU, meanwhile, flounders. Ursula von der Leyen promises a robust plan to counter Trump, but the 27 member states bicker like kids in a schoolyard. It's a rerun of Brexit. Internal divisions weakening the bloc against an opponent who doesn't hesitate to hit hard. This isn't Trump's first rodeo. In 2018, his tariffs on steel and aluminum sparked European retaliations, costing thousands of jobs in France, Germany, Belgium. Today he's back at it, but on a grander scale. His bet? Create chaos, then pose as the savior. The markets aren't fooled. The CAC 40 dropped 0.5% yesterday, and traders talk of a take-home moment. Trump always chickens out. But this time, the uncertainty is too great. Investors, industries, citizens, everyone feels the wind shifting. And the mainstream media? They keep serving lukewarm analyses, dodging the real issue, a savage capitalism where the powerful set the rules, while workers, consumers, and small businesses take the hit. And are you still surprised? These tariffs aren't just about taxes. In the short term, they'll drive up prices everywhere. In the US, a bottle of French wine, an Italian cheese, a German car, everything will cost more. In Europe, key sectors, automotive, agriculture, steel, are in the crosshairs. In Dunkirk, ArcelorMittal's 600 job cuts are just a taste of what's coming. In Bordeaux, winemakers speak of a bloodbath if US tariffs return. In the medium term, it's a cluster bomb. Small businesses, already battered by the energy crisis and post-COVID cost spikes, won't survive the shock. Supply chains, stretched thin since the pandemic, are set to snap. Remember empty shelves during COVID? Get ready for round 2, but worse. And in the long term, the World Bank has already slashed its 2025 growth forecasts. Economists warn of 4% inflation in the US, paralyzing the Federal Reserve. A global recession is no longer a worst-case scenario, it's a tangible threat. For the youth, it's an even bleaker future. Fewer jobs, pricier goods, and a divided Europe unable to protect its citizens. For the climate, it's a disaster. Tariffs stifle exports of green technologies, like Chinese solar panels or European wind turbines. Carbon neutrality goals, they risk becoming empty promises while Trump plays sheriff, and freedoms, they erode in this climate of blackmail where entire nations are forced to align with one man's dictates. China's rare earths, for instance, by conceding on this, Beijing avoids an immediate crisis. But at what cost? Increased US dependence on strategic resources and a constant threat to global industry. Consumers will foot the bill. In the US, economists estimate these tariffs could cost each household up to $2,000 a year. In Europe, factory workers, farmers, small entrepreneurs will be the first to fall. But beyond the numbers, it's about power. Trump doesn't negotiate, he imposes. His take it or leave it letters are an admission. He doesn't believe in cooperation, only domination. And Europe? It hesitates, waffles, gets lost in its divisions. Will the G7 countries meeting in Canada this weekend finally speak with one voice? Don't hold your breath. Meanwhile, Trump moves his pawns, negotiates with small countries to isolate them, and keeps the pressure on the big players. It's an age-old strategy, divide and conquer, and it works because no one seems ready to stand up to him. What's at stake here is more than a trade war. It's a symptom of a fractured world, where every man for himself trumps solidarity. Trump isn't solely to blame. Our European leaders, mired in internal squabbles, share the fault. Why doesn't the EU have a clear plan to fight back? Why does it leave entire sectors, agriculture, industry, tech, at the mercy of this blackmail? And why do mainstream media, so quick to dissect Trump's tweets, avoid talking about the real victims, factory workers, farmers, young people already struggling to make ends meet? So what do? Sit back, watch the markets wobble and factories close, keep scrolling, hoping someone else will fix it? Or do we wake up? This July 9th, with or without a reprieve, the axe will fall. These tariffs aren't just economic policy, they're a symbol of a world where the powerful impose their law, where people pay the price, where cooperation is sacrificed on the altar of ego. But it's not inevitable. Demand a united Europe capable of standing up to this juggernaut. Demand policies that protect workers, not corporate profits. Demand a world where the economy serves citizens, not one president's whims. Think, act now, because if we do nothing, it's our lives, our jobs, our future that will be taxed at 125%.